to the KYN podcast. Today we're going to be joined by Cruz Collin, also known as Wankatuya Keya. I don't know if I was pronouncing it so well, but we're excited to have Cruz here because he is representing the wider Native American, Indigenous American community on the KYN podcast today. We're going to understand exactly what's going on, the history of the Native American, the current status and what's happening. And of course, he's going to take us through the journey of what he's doing currently and how he's going about to make sure that the world gets to understand the value that the indigenous people, the indigenous culture of the world has to offer and why and how they can take their place in society. So, Cruz, welcome to the KYN podcast. Keya, we're excited to have you. It's just the whole Native American story is quite interesting. We'd like you to start by just giving us an introduction of you as Cruz, back into your childhood, how it was for you growing up in the Native American community, and your education to where you are now. So why don't you take us through that?
Of course. Thank you very much. Okay. So I will, so of course my name is Cruz Collin, as he introduced me, or Wankatuya Keya, which is my Native American Lakota name. It was given to me through one of our major ceremonies called the Sundance ceremony. And this ceremony is one of the most important aspects of my culture, and it has been an integral part of me growing up, and it has helped me to maintain my cultural ways and teachings and not to fall into the dominant society's trap of changing who you are and altering yourself in order to fit their perspective. You can't give up on yourself. You have to maintain the way that your culture has put forth, because you have to relay respect to your ancestors and understand where you come from, because I believe that is one of the most important aspects of you, really, because it's who you are and it is who your ancestors were created you. So it's really important to pay respect to them. And I start with that because the Sundance, as I said, is the most integral part of our society. It is what it was built around. It is a ceremony that has been passed down for thousands of years. And throughout time, it has been very important for us Lakota to maintain our way of life. And so I will start by, I guess, saying my childhood. So I'll start from when I was about 5, because that is the first time that I went to a Sundance. And it was very interesting and for me to see, because before then, I really didn't understand what was going on. I haven't really been exposed to my culture. I knew about it, but it wasn't as a big thing. But at a young age, when I saw the Sundance go on, something clicked deep inside, and I understood. I can't explain it, but it was almost like the world itself made sense. I knew who I was. I knew my culture. It all just made sense. And at a young age, I know most people don't really think about those things, I'm sure, but that's just the way I have always thought. I've always been very methodical. I mean, I guess I'm just very focused on my past and the past of my people. And I just find it very interesting, because I feel deep in my heart that in order to move forward, we can't forget the past. And that has been a very important part for me in my journey of whenever I was younger, because I always had the long hair. I always looked different. I approached problems different. I had trouble learning at first because I approached things a different way. That's just the way my head works. And at first, like when I was in 2nd grade, which is in America, it was of course young, but 2nd and 3rd grade, I was not performing how they wanted me to. And the teacher told me, "Oh, your son is never going to achieve anything. He is dumb. He can't learn." And she just really, it did hurt. But my parents, they defended me, and they knew that I was like that because I was different. My head did work differently. I had different experiences, and they supported me in that they knew why I wasn't learning a certain way. So then they helped me to learn a different way. They helped me to learn more in an indigenous way, how to approach math, how to approach reading. And it really helped me. And then after that, I was doing great. I was getting almost straight A's, and it was all better. And the teachers were so surprised to see it, because how could this student performing so low do so well now? It didn't make any sense. They didn't know what to do with me. And I even remember still, I was in, I believe, 4th grade, and the principal walked in of the school, and she came to me and she pulled me aside, and I thought I was in trouble. I was like, oh no, what did I do? But it turns out she was pulling me aside because she said to tell me no student at that school had ever made so much progress in reading and math in such a short time, and she's never seen anything like it. And she was so surprised, because it seemed to just happen almost instantly. It was a few months, and it was amazing. So I'm bringing this up because I feel it's very important. It's because if your head works a different way, a lot of Indigenous have a hard time because the system is not designed for you. It's not designed for your head, and it's not your fault. It's never been your fault. You have to just learn a different way, because your head has been designed over generations and generations to learn a certain way. It's not your fault, and it doesn't mean anything negative about you. It doesn't reflect on you at all. It simply means you have to approach problems differently. And ever since then, I've approached them differently, and I've done very well in school, and it's never been an issue ever since. And I'm just really grateful that my parents supported me at such a young age, and they understood why I was having trouble. That was, I feel, very important. That's why I feel it's very worth me mentioning it, because I did have a different way of growing up, and I did have a different experiences, but it doesn't reflect on me in a negative way. You have to they're all positives. Everything you learn from when you're young and what you experience, especially from your culture, please hold on to it. It's very important, because you can't forget the past. I'll repeat it again. You have to learn from the past in order to move forward, because if we don't know and we're unaware of the past, we just repeat the same patterns. And I feel that that's why society is the way it is, because yes, we take history class, but it's not a big enough deal. I mean, we're seeing it now, right? In 1910, we had a big Spanish flu epidemic in the US and worldwide. And now, almost exactly 100 years later, it's the same thing. And we see the pattern, but we don't assess it enough. We don't say, okay, it happened then. Why did it happen now? How can we assess and look at the past to deal with it in a more positive manner? It just goes right over people's heads. 100 years is nothing. In the Americas, we were there for thousands and thousands of years, and our culture is very, very ancient because of that. We have changed quite a lot, and we've been up and down. For example, then there was in the Americas, there was this place called Chaco Canyon. It was on the Navajo. It's what is currently the Navajo reservation, and they were a neighboring tribe of ours. And what it was is it was the start of a city in the Americas, and it was large. They had large buildings. They had markets, big fields. They had mines. They had all those other things, but what the issue was, they had slaves, and that was when it didn't work. They had a massive drought, and things just weren't working anymore because they were taking too much water, they were exploiting too many resources, and instead of just continuing what they did and conquer other people to fill the void that they've created, they just stopped. They abandoned it because they saw something wasn't working, and they weren't going to steal from others to help fix their mistakes. They saw the mistake, they assessed it, and they abandoned it, and they went back to the way it was before. And there are many ways like that all throughout the Americas. And the Mayans were another great example. They had vast, vast cities that had millions and millions of inhabitants with giant temples. They had aqueducts. They had basically apartment blocks. It was amazing. They had sewage systems, open markets. It was massive. And the same thing happened. very successful in the current on a Western sense. And when I say Western, I mean European sense. They were very successful. They had exploited lots of materials. They had a giant city. They had lots of crops. It was all working. But they noticed something wasn't quite right. They were taking more than they were giving, and it wasn't working. So once they saw that it wasn't working, they put it down and they went back into the jungle. And this was a big issue a big topic of discussion when the Spanish arrived, because they came and they saw these huge cities, these vast cities, and they didn't understand how these things could have been built. And because currently the people who took over the cities were called the Aztec, and the Aztec were more European. They were more warlike and more aggressive like that, and they had taken over a lot of the cities. But the Europeans saw, wait a second, these people couldn't have possibly built these, because they were more like them at the time. They were more aggressive, more warlike, more, I don't want to say savage because it's not a right word, but it's more, I don't know, it wasn't quite right. They knew something was off because they didn't see how these people could have actually built these huge complexes. And the Mayans weren't gone. They were still there. They simply just went back to living in the jungle. And that was because they knew it wasn't working, and they wanted to go back to sustainability and being one with the environment again. And that's a big thing that I think we really need to assess in modern era.
So where are you currently in Europe? And
yes,
share with us
why
are you in Europe and what exactly you're doing right now?
Yes. Okay. So currently I am in Toulouse, France, because my mother is working at the CNRS, which is the medical school and major science institute for France, because what she has been tasked with by my elders and by our elders is to try and bring our ways into mainstream modern science, bring indigenous people's knowledge into modern science. Because what's happened over the years is indigenous peoples all over the world have been slaughtered, and things have been taken from them. They've been enslaved. Their cultures have been destroyed because of the aggressive people that came along and just wanted to dominate everything. Majorly the people from Europe, they just thought, okay, we steal because we can't. So we just keep doing that. Like I mentioned earlier, filling the void of their society by taking things from others. They didn't fix themselves. They took more from everyone else because they didn't want to look at it. Nothing was wrong with them. It was everyone else who was the problem. So we gotta keep stealing to maintain it. But it's not a working model, and we're seeing that now. We're running out. Resources are running dry. The polar ice caps are melting. Global warming, the COVID. It's all happening really fast, and people are starting to realize, especially scientists, oh no, we're in trouble. Everything is starting to fall apart. Our perfect society is, oh no, something's not working. Our crops are failing. It's not looking good. So the reason my grandmother has told my mother that it's time to bring our sciences forward, and it's time to teach the world what it means, what sustainability means, and what it looks like, and what our models look like, and why we did what we did, why we abandoned these vast cities and complexes when it wasn't working, why we had the will to do that, because we simply had a different way of looking at things. We saw that if we were taking more than we were giving, in future generations, it was going to run out. And if your culture is built on bettering life for the next generation, oh no, we're failing. We're failing. We're going to fail the next generation. We're going to fail our people, our grandchildren, our grandchildren's children. We're failing them. So we have to change. Instead of the current way we're looking at things, whereas take more, take it for yourself because you're going to be dead in 100 years anyway. And that's not good, because they're not thinking sustainably, because their society's built on building up one's self while hurting those around you, while lowering others. But if you want to be a strong society, you have to work together. You have to do that. Because if you don't do that, then society will crumble and your future will crumble, and you won't have a future because it's all gone, because you exploited everything and ruined it. So that's why I'm currently here with my parents, because we are going to try and explain to these Western scientists what sustainability means, why we did what we did, and how we need to approach things in future. And we have to do it now, because what happens with all these scientific papers and all this research that is done by these major institutes is that these things go into law. They take all these documents, they use them as references, and then they turn that into the legislation. So if we want to ever make an impact, we have to then be at the source. We have to be at the source and influencing those documents that can then be cited and then turned into law. Right now, we can't call on anything because there's no base for it. We have to build that base, and we have to start now. We're to the wire. It's almost too late, but I don't think it's too late. I really do think we can make a change, but we have to do it now, and we have to do it in a real way. We can't hide anymore.
No,
and that is currently why I'm in Europe.
Yeah, you highlight a lot that are picking up all you're doing, trying to get exactly why the native way of life was original way. All this economic downtown and global warming, all that is a effect of our current, life. Everything would have been as it was originally, and which is what has been preserved by the native and community. And that's amazing. So why don't you share with us what's the current status of the Native American and Indigenous community? How was the current? What's happening currently? What's trending?
Yes. So what is happening currently? It's all very different, because there were many tribes in the Americas. There were thousands and thousands of tribes. I can speak for the Lakota because that is the main tribe I represent, as well as also partly Mayan. That's why I brought up the Mayan, because that's also a part of me. So it's Mayan and Lakota. Those are my two main bloodlines which I descend from. Of course, there was more because we were there for thousands of years. You don't think we were mixing between tribes? Of course we were, but yeah, those are my two main cultural affiliations. So I feel comfortable talking about both of those, and I feel it's important to share that because I can speak for that, because that is me. So I feel comfortable with that. But as far as legally currently with other tribes, I can tell you that it's very different. Depends on each tribe. So for example, the Cherokee make lots of money from casinos. So they have lots of casino money coming in. So in the US, what they've done is you're not allowed to gamble in most states. So how they've gotten around it is they've made it so, okay, you can gamble on Indian reservations. You're allowed to do that. So a lot of tribes, this is the way of actually making tribes turn more European. It's a way of actually it's a tricky way of doing it, but they're trying to get them to become American, right? American, mainstream American. They're trying to do it in a tricky way, but they're saying, okay, you can have the casinos and you can make the money from that. So it's been a way of actually almost corrupting them into changing who they are because of the money. And casinos and gambling and alcohol, those are the worst things that you can those are like things of the worst things in societies, because they have all these other negative effects. And it's done on purpose, which is the sad part, because they're saying, okay, if you want to make money, you have to do this. You have to lower yourself to these standards in order to do it, because they know if they do that, then they'll probably end up slowly coming into modern society, right? They're not going to be native anymore. They'll just be like everyone else. And that's been what most tribes have done that are very wealthy, because they make billions and billions of dollars from these casinos and some. Like the main tribe in Florida, they make billions and billions of dollars from these casinos. And so they're doing quite well. So financially, they're doing very well. So they get every member of the tribe gets a percentage of that casino money. They can do what they wish with it. So they're doing financially quite well. However, the tribes that have rejected those things are not doing very well. So the Lakota are one of the poorest in the entire United States, continental US, because they haven't really accepted them yet. They're still fighting it. There is a few casinos, but they're very small and they're not like mainstream yet. So they're still working on trying to get them to become part of mainstream society. So the Lakota are different in that manner, which is we we were the last to be conquered, or the last to be attemptedly conquered, because we were in the very middle, almost the very middle of the US, near the Canadian border, that area. So we were like right in the middle. So the Spanish were coming from South America and Mexico. They were coming up. Then the English were coming from that side. The French were coming up the middle, and Canada. So they were starting to get circled in, but they were in the very middle. So they were some of the last to keep their ways for that reason, because they were some of the last to be conquered. It wasn't until 1851 when they made the first treaty with the US government for their sovereignty.
Yeah.
And then once the US government found gold in the Black Hills, which is our sacred mountains, they of course broke that treaty and went to steal our gold. So then we had to fight them and then kick them out and make another treaty in 1868, which then they of course broke again. But it's difficult because this is very recent. 1868, that's very recent compared to most places. Anywhere really. That's practically, I don't want to say yesterday, but I mean the grand scheme of things, it's very, very recent. Several generations back. Like my great grandfather was still basically pure Lakota, was living in a teepee, all that. He was riding horses on the back. He had all the eagle feathers. I mean, it was like it was yesterday. It really is like it was yesterday. And they remember that. Our elders remember that, being little kids sitting on their great grandfather's knee or their grandfather's knee. And they were sitting at these Sundance ceremonies and they were watching the people ride horses and in teepees, and they remember it. So it's not too late. It's not too late for us. And we still hold on to that because it was yesterday for us, if that makes any sense. We know we still have something to hold on to. We haven't been beaten and beaten and beaten for hundreds of years like so many other cultures were. We fought amongst each other, but it was very rare and it wasn't nowhere brutal as what most have had to go through. So like in Africa with the slave trade, that was hundreds and hundreds of years of intense violence. And that really has an effect on people. It really does. And Mexico too, and South America, that was hundreds and hundreds of years of the Spanish enslaving them and turning them into, and they were mining lots of silver and gold out of their mountains and stealing all their stuff. So it was, we've had an advantage in that we fought till the last second and we held out to the last second. So we still have a vast amount of our traditional knowledge and language and everything in between to hold on to. And a lot of people just don't have that, but they have to see that it is possible. It is possible to hold on to your traditions and who you are in this modern society. You don't have to give up. It's not necessary. You can hold on to it. So we have to be a model for the world to show them that you don't have to give up. Your ways are beautiful. Your culture is beautiful. Don't give up. Don't become so sucked into the mainstream modern society and dominating culture that you forget who you are. You forget who your ancestors were. You forget what they fought for and what they stood for. So I believe that is the most important thing to remember, is that we held out to the last second. So we are paying the price for it. We are quite poor because of that. And so currently the US government wants to buy the Black Hills from us. We still technically have legal claim. And of course they want all our gold, and they've been taking it anyway and taking all the uranium and silver and oil, and they're still taking it, but they're doing it in sneaky legal loopholes where it's not legal. We still own it. We still have claim to it, but they're doing it anyway. They're saying, oh, we're managing it for you. But really, we're not getting any of that money. It's all being taken out. Billions and billions of dollars. It's awful. It really is awful. They do it, and they act like we don't see it. We're like, guys, hey, we see those giant dump trucks. We see all this. It's right around us, and it's really, it's not only upsetting. It's I guess just not disrespectful. Doesn't even really cover it. It's just really awful. And so currently they have a standing treaty in place where they're trying to buy the Black Hills from us on legally, like fully buy it from us so we can't complain anymore. And right now there's $2 billion sitting in accounts, many accounts, waiting to be transferred over to the tribe. $2 billion waiting to be transferred over. And our lawyers still say no. We still say no. We blocked it. They've had many attempts throughout the years to try and start trickling the money in and saying, oh, well, you guys technically took the money. So but still they've said no. The lawyers have said no. The main lawyer was named Mario Gonzalez, and he's actually a close family friend, funny enough. And I was with him in February with my mom, and we were discussing her latest scientific paper on whether there were horses in the Americas before the Europeans brought them and before the Spanish brought them. So that's currently where we're starting, because the Lakota were a horse culture. They were people of the horse, and they're so deeply woven into our society. It's insulting, and it's almost comedic, the fact that they can say we didn't have the horse, because there's thousands and thousands of years of evidence built into our songs, our language, the way we approach life, the way everything. The horse, we even refer to it as the horse nation. Like they were equals to us. It was truly a part of our society. They were our friends. They weren't something to be exploited and conquered. They were our family, and they chose to be with us. We didn't have fences. I don't know if you really can understand the impact and severity of this, but the Lakota had no fences. Literally, the horses would choose to be with us. They would choose to be with us. That is how well we treated them, and that is how much we respected them. Yes, we would have horse herds that would follow us along when we would migrate and move around to different places. Again, because we didn't want to pollute one area too much. It was all about sustainability, moving around so you don't affect one place in a too negative of a fashion. Again, that idea of sustainability. On a larger scale, it's more difficult, but it's these small things that you can do and you see that can help influence the larger society.
That's amazing. We could talk the whole time. It's so much. We may have to do a series of 3 different podcasts. Cruz, just to ensure we capture this whole issue. But for now, I just want you to share your parting shot on what you feel, what you truly feel deep within about the Indigenous and how much there's need for the world out there to accept the path. It's the path to sustainability. It's the path to true freedom. That's what I'm hearing and listening to you. What are your parting shots for us as we come to the close? Noticing that you have so passionate about it. There's so much you can share, but we want to have it inside. Really want the whole world to know. If you are to cover up everything and share today, what are those words you want to cover the world?
Okay, if I had to wrap up everything in a good way, I would say it would have to be that don't forget your past, because it is the most important part of you. The big thing with society these days is they want you to only think about the now and forget about the past, because you are you, which there is merit in that. You're not held back by your past, but you also can't belong to nothing. That's a big issue too, is that youth are saying, oh, I am me. I'm free to be me. But what does that mean? And my past doesn't matter at all, and future. But that's great, and it has merit, and it really is important, but you also can't forget the positives. You can't just ignore everything in a big group and say, okay, everything was bad, so we just put it all to the side and move forward. There has to be a balance. Yes, you can ignore the negatives to an extent, but you can't just push away the positives as well. And that is also very important to remember. Don't push away everything. You can push away the bad things if it's too painful and you need to, but don't push away everything. Please don't. Hold on to your culture. Hold on to what you believe in, and really stay true to yourself. I think that's a good way to close it. I really do. I think that's a good way to close it.
I really want to have another cast with you, especially demystifying the trends and what's happening. We think there's a lot of work they're doing out there. I love the fact that you and your mom are going out of your way to ensure that the world actually knows the value that you bring, and recording, because none of this would have been recorded if you didn't step up, and if you didn't come up and let the world know exactly what they're missing, and how the whole history has to be preserved and maintained, and And just looking at the current trends as they've shared, is a lot that's happening that if we remain indigenous, would not be happening. So thank you very much, Cruz, for taking some time to join us for this cast. Like I've shared, we look forward to yet another one. To demystify the indigenous community more, I'll be sharing an invite. But for now, thank you all for listening to the Game podcast, and thank you, Cruz, for being a part of this Game podcast.
And thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. Have a good day, everyone.